You all for taking part tonight. We are live here in Brooklyn, New York. You all have the agenda that was sent out and disseminated yesterday, and so we'll keep to it tonight. Should be a good, productive, strong meeting. And so, as we usually do, we'll start with the mission moment this evening, and I'll say a few words after these students say a few words. And so, Jim, this is Instagram at its best. This is our high school Instagram page. This came out just over a week and a half ago. And
where we all applied to college.
Really short but important clip. As you heard, we achieved 100% of our students submitting at least one college application to a 2 or 4 year school, which is great news and really cool to see kids kind of collectively proud of that for their peers and themselves. So good moment for us. I'll say that this is the earliest we've achieved that feat as a school. And so there have also been a number of acceptances in the air over the past couple of weeks. A few notables: we've got our first student who was admitted to Barnard. Haven't had a student attend Barnard thus far, so that's a big deal for us. And we also had 2 students apply and get accepted to the Culinary Arts Institute, CIA, up in Poughkeepsie, which is a really terrific culinary arts school. And so we've got some future chefs in the mix, perhaps if that's where they decide to bring their talents. So I'm going to say a bit more tonight, just momentarily, about graduation, its connection to college applications, its connection to matriculation, its connection to persistence, and then completion tonight. So we do have some updates with regard to alumni success, and so we'll see how perhaps this connects to the ultimate goal of having kids obtain a degree. So I think with that today, that's the mission moment. We move into current headlines. We are officially just over a third of the way through the year now. It's zooming by. And so I wanted to bring you some updates since the last time we spoke just over a month ago as a full board. And here we go. Feel free to shout out with any questions you have, any insights, any wonderings. So here is the lay of the land. So enrollment wise, we are at 546, which is 3 below where we were, I think, last month. We've had a few students withdraw. We had one family of 3 withdraw to move to Michigan last week. That's heartbreaking, but we wish them well. In any case, we're down a few, but have a few students who are going to be joining us very likely in the coming week and just after the break. So that's where we are enrollment-wise as a school, fairly steady in the high 540s. Staffing wise, we did fill 2 vacancies at the middle school. If you recall, we had an ELA vacancy and a reading interventionist role vacancy. Those have been filled with a new hire and then someone coming back from caregiver leave. We do have 1 vacancy at the high school right now as of last month, a health and PE teacher. So we're actively looking to fill that position with someone talented, and we are covering that internally right now. With regard to internal assessments, we'll talk about high school results from the IA1 assessment today. We talked about IA results for the middle school last month, if you recall, and Melissa may provide a couple of updates on kind of where we are there too. Tutoring wise, I think the one update I'll bring to the mix from last month is that with the hiring and return of a reading interventionist, we're now offering reading interventions to a select number of students at the middle school. And so this is good for those, especially those who would benefit from some acceleration in their reading skills so that they're reaching grade and level equivalency as soon as possible. So that's one new update on the academic front. With regard to college and career readiness, you've heard the big announcement already from one of our very own. 100% of our seniors have now submitted at least one college application. From a PBIS standpoint, which is a fancy way of saying school culture and climate, we do have a score, so to speak, for both our middle school and high school. And actually at our middle school, we have 2 scores, a baseline score and then 1 score a month and a half out. And if you recall, we're using a tool to help us assess just the fidelity with which we carry out the way in which we do school, both from a culture perspective, climate perspective, the way in which kids behave and the way in which we actively, positively reinforce good habits, good decisions, etc. So I'm pleased to say that the middle school, we made some good gains from the baseline to where we were now as a week ago. I'll have an update for the high school next month, and we'll do a deep dive on this in January as well. So that's where we are PBAS wise. And I think, as I said last month, we have not used this tool before to kind of give us a sense of where we are in this area of school. So I'm excited to continue to use it and refine the way we use it. On a related front, with regard to community service, it continues. So this month we've got a toy drive at the middle school, and we have our annual Love Your Neighbor Day, which is a school-wide community service day where we partner with a host of organizations in the local community and do something good. And so I think we might have one of our very own, Trudy Sandy, taking part in that on Friday. Trudy, I look forward to having you there for that. But it's a really tremendous event for us, and we've done this now. I think this might be year 4 or year 5. Family engagement wise, another sort of like culture related update. We did a family conferences just before the Thanksgiving break on that Monday and Tuesday. I'm pleased to say that we had over 75 or just around 75% of our families in participation on average across sites. And so that did meet the target that we had as a school of around 70. At the middle school, we had some volunteers, family members who were there to greet families as they came in, give them some light refreshments after a long day of work. These were evening conferences. And so I think it just made for a really nice, welcoming atmosphere for families coming in. And if you've experienced conferences before, you know it typically takes place after a long day at work. Families can be tired. It's like an additional kind of thing, but it's important. And so it was good for us to kind of applaud families as they came in, knowing all that they do. At the high school, we also did something a bit different. We had student-led conferences this year, so students taking more of the facilitation role. They were trained up on that in advisory, and then able to perhaps take some responsibility in ways that they haven't before. They were not passive audience members during conferences. They were leading the way. And so imagine teacher, parent, student, that group actively talking about progress, strengths, areas of growth, next steps, etc. So a good event, a good first for us. We will continue with that. Athletically, winter season has begun. So you can see the teams on the screen. We've got 4 sports teams from both sites represented. If you're interested in attending a match, a game, please let me know. I'd love to have you. There are a number of games this week, and coming back from break, there are a number of games. So those games are also on our website. The schedules are. So that's that. Other things to mention here from like an evaluation, kind of like goals standpoint of things. We did complete self-assessments for staff at both sites this past month, and we're now looking forward to mid-year evaluations, and the planning of that is underway. Perception survey wise, we do have family, staff, and student perception survey data. If you recall, we use a tool called Panorama and collect data in the fall and spring. We have fall data. It's now being analyzed. I'll have something for this board in a summary form in January to share out. And then we are still awaiting updates on our SED grant that we are hoping to obtain. And that's where we are as of mid-December in closing out the 2023 calendar year. Let me pause there and see if there are any additional questions, insights, etc. All right, Jim, shall we move on to the next topic then? All right, so as a part of our strategic planning focus of tonight's meeting, I want to give an update on graduation rate forecasts. That is, where is our class of 2024 in their graduation pursuits, and then I'll also provide some updates on where we are with our alumni success support, where we've got 4 cohorts of graduates out in the world. So first, with graduation forecasts, and this is as of December 1st, headline is we're in pretty good form right now. Things are looking solid. So every year we kind of step back and look at like the number of credits obtained by our seniors, the number of Regents exams that have been passed, There are requirements for both with regard to graduation. And so right now we've got about 80%, just over 80% of our students in good standing, meaning they've um, earned the course credits they need to be in good standing and be smoothly in a place to graduate, given where they are now, moving into the remainder of the year. And they also have obtained or passed the Regents exams they need to pass in order to graduate. So a vast majority of our kids are in good form, good standing. 11 of our students, we've identified 11 students that are what we're calling on a watch. They might be off track due to either a Regents exam or course credits. And so we've identified what the core issue is, and then we built in some supports. I'll mention that in a moment to support them. And then we've got 3 students that are not expected to graduate. I should say that there is a possibility in at least one case, but there's a hill to climb here, and 4 years may not be the right move in these cases. And so we're looking at perhaps a 5-year graduation mark for one of the students, and then 2 of the students right now, they're on our roster but not attending our school. A host of issues there. I won't get into them, but I think you're kind of individualistic to students and families and their interests. And so, for example, I believe one of the students is looking at an online option instead of going to school. So anyway, that's kind of where we are and looking at the whole class and where we might provide more customized supports. With that in mind, interventions are as follows. For those students that are Regents deficient, they need to pass an exam or multiple exams in order to graduate in June. Right now, those students are receiving tutoring in prep for the January Regents exam. Regents exams are given 3 times a year, January, June, and August. And so we're now going to have these students take their exams in January, following some intensive tutoring, and then we'll reassess at that point in time to see sort of like what the best path forward is. For those students who are credit deficient, right now, they are meeting individually with one of our academic counselors, where the focus really is on organization skills, habits, thinking ahead to what assignments are due and when to get them done. There may be some academic sort of focused support there too, but this academic counsel is really working with these students to sort of help them just manage their course load and study load. And so that's the kind of core deficiency for some of these kids. And so that's what we're doing to address it. There is a group of senior leaders that met 2 weeks ago to look at this data and build out our forecast for June. We'll reconvene after February. We're in early February after midterms and after the January Regents exams to reassess sort of standing, progress, interventions, et cetera. Generally speaking, right now, I would forecast our 4-year graduation rate for the class of 2024 to be somewhere between 89 and 96%, where our goal is 93. So we are very much within range there. To give you a sense of that, this is a historic visual, which provides in green our graduation rates, our 4-year graduation rates by cohort. And so you see there, the 4 bars averaging to 92% over that time. So we are just beyond that 92% mark based on where we are now. It fits within the range or window I mentioned a moment ago, but I do believe we'll be just above that if we stay the course. In addition to that, and just so you have a sense of how that compares, New York State in blue, their average graduation rate over the same term is 86%. And while not listed here, for students with special needs, our 4-year graduation rate on average over the past 4 years has been in the low 90s. At the state level, it's in the mid and high 60s. So we are outpacing state in those areas, and we see that trend continuing this year. So that's where things stand on the graduation front from high school. Let me pause there and see if there are any questions. All right. Cool. So let's kind of move on to alumni success. And just as a school, you know, our mission is to provide all of our students with an exceptional college prep education that empowers them to lead fulfilling lives. It's thus important, given this mission, to look at how we're doing. And that means looking beyond high school graduation to how kids are doing post-secondarily. And so here we are today. I want to give you a brief update on where things stand. As I do so, check my thinking here. Does this seem right? I'll say that in order to go to college, kids have to graduate from high school. So the fact that we do have fairly high graduation rates and appear to be in range of that this year again, that bodes well for college applications and success. Let's take a look at some of the recent data here. So what you have here are just college applications over time from 2020, the class of 2020, to the class of 2023. And what you see is you see a breakdown of different groups within our school. All is in blue, students with special needs in red, students who are identified as economically disadvantaged in yellow, and first-generation college-going students in green. And what you know here for class 2020 is we had all of our students apply to college. We're in the same boat this year. All of our students have applied to college as of December 6th. So that means that they have now a door open potentially to obtaining admission to a college. And so we'll look at that in a moment. But you see kind of a trend overall. And this was during COVID times over the past 2 years. And so that definitely had an impact on college going nationally and at our school. Our goal here is for 90% of our students or above to apply to college, and that is a 2 or 4 year college. And so we are exceeding that now and have exceeded that over the past 4 years. Are there any questions clarification-wise with this here? All right, so beyond applying to college is being accepted to college. And so what you'll notice here is the same general bars representing the same subgroups. And for the class of 2020, our founding class, we had 100% of students apply and 100% of students get admitted. And that means that our CCR department is doing its job. Every one of our kids who graduates from school should have an option post-secondarily, and that happened in our first year. And actually, it's happened in every year. Essentially, this visual is the same exact visual as what you see here. Same bars, same levels. They just represent two different measures. One is applications, one is acceptances. But in the past 4 years, anyone who's applied has been accepted to one school at the very least. And for a vast majority of our kids, it's several. Any questions here? You've seen applications and acceptances thus far. All right, let's move into matriculation. You apply, you get accepted, and then you matriculate. And so here, what you're able to see, let me just kind of zoom into one general bar. For all students last year from the class of 2023, 65% of students matriculated into a 4-year college, 6% matriculated into a 2-year college. Overall, 71% of our graduates matriculated. So we had a graduation rate in the 90s, 70% of those students, and all of them applied, accepted, and were accepted to college. And then we had 71% then enroll or matriculate. And so you'll see longitudinally how last year compares with other years. And what you might notice is that we have fewer students pretty gradually applying, being accepted, and matriculating into a 2-year school. And you'll see some of the trends among subgroups of interest, economically disadvantaged students and students who are first gen. Other things of note here. Our goal was for 80% of our students, 80% of our graduates specifically, to matriculate to a 2 or 4 year college. And that's 80% or above. As I said, last year we were at 71%, and we've been in the low 70s for the past 4 years. So we would like to increase the number of students to meet this goal, this target, which is just based on national trends, where we'd like to be, which is a bit better than trends And we've got a little way to go here. So I'm going to talk a bit about some of the things we're doing to make that happen this year. Let me pause there, though, and see if there are any questions about this data. All right. So with that, some of the actions that our team is taking, and I mean specifically our college and career readiness team, well as our alumni success manager, is the following. To increase matriculation, there are four things that we're kind of focusing on. One is improved matching using data and historical data. Historically, where our kids tended to thrive and in what schools, and let's be sure to promote that if it's a good fit. Inversely, if we've had students not do well at certain schools, perhaps not be supported well by certain schools, we're tending to shy away from those more so than we have in the past. And so using matching data to guide our guidance, that's one. Second is actively looking to decrease late enrollment. Students that enroll in the summer, it's just harder. They haven't kind of like hit the kind of smooth landing that other students have in preparing in the spring, having support from us while school is in session to be truly prepared for just the life change in college. And so minimizing late enrollment is something else on our mind this year. I think we're in a good place given that we've had every student apply earlier than we have in the past. If we continue with that trajectory, having fewer students be in a position of needing to enroll after graduated from our school or over the summer where there isn't the same level of support. That's two. Three is providing a module in the spring, and that would be a matriculation to college module using a resource available to us, as well as maybe adapting it to meet our own kids' needs, but offering that. So explicitly teaching into the transition to college and what students must know and do, as well as families. And so we've done some of that in the past, but we're looking to double down on it and perhaps, again, use resources beyond our school to make that happen. That's three. And then finally, four is cohorting, which just means thinking about groups of our students going to the same colleges. So there's some familiarity, some peer support. Kids aren't feeling lonely. They've got someone to lean on, to be supportive of and gain support of. That kind of thing. There's some research out there that I think has shown that this is good for kids in terms of persistence. And so that's the fourth focus for us this year. Let me pause there. So those are the four moves. Do those seem right, given our goal to up matriculation from somewhere in the low 70s to something closer to 80 or above? All right, so we've talked about applications, we've talked about acceptances, we've talked about matriculating, and now let's look at persistence. I'm going to just talk you through the class of 2020 so you understand what's going on here. The class of 2020 has been in college now for 3 years and are now in their fourth year. So at the end of their first year outside of immediately graduating from Unity, 73% of students were matriculated in a college. Following that, going into the second year, at the end of the second year, 46, quite a dip in terms of persistence from 1 year out to 2 years out. And then in the third year, going into the fourth year, we saw some smoothing out where 44% of students are matriculated now, perhaps a year away from graduation, perhaps not, perhaps they're taking more time to graduate, but that's the general summary story for our first founding class at Unity. And so you can look at the red bar representing our second class and see sort of where they are, as well as our third class, the class of 2022, which is now just halfway through their second year. So they've only had kind of one full year of persistence being measured, and that was 70% at the end of year one. Couple of findings here. Our second class, really strong on the matriculation front coming out of year one. Still strong in year two, but definitely a drop, which I think is natural. But that's what we're seeing very early as we track and communicate with kids about how just things are going and what kids are doing post-secondarily beyond Unity. Let me pause there and see if there are any questions among team here.
Well, I mean, the obvious question is why? Is it that they found it to be too hard? Was it a financial issue? Was it a move? Do you even, I mean, how you probably, it's hard to get that data, but
Yeah.
what's your sense?
Yeah, and Trudy, if you're available right now, it'd be great to have you kind of chime in. This is like a question fielded back in August with some of our teachers, but I think it kind of runs the gamut. There are individual stories. Some of this is financial. Some of this is being too far from home and maybe the fit not being there. Kids feeling isolated, which goes back to like the cohorting. And I think we've got some more research to do with regard to like just college prep and the skills kids have once they leave our school. And so on my docket with our data analysts is to do some work for the college and career readiness team around like, hey, what's the correlation between EP classes taken or GPA or attendance with persistence? The type of school one goes to, any of those sorts of things. So there's some data crunching to do as we look at this early data. But I think those are some of the trends I would name. Melissa, would you add anything? Or again, Trudy, if you're there, would you add anything?
You also have to think like the first cohort, they went into college during COVID. Mm-hmm. So I know for my, the group of students that that was a hard transition, right? Everything just stopped suddenly. And then they went in during COVID and they were doing studies from either a dorm room or just sitting in front of
in many cases, right? A lot of them didn't go off to campus, they stayed at home.
Absolutely.
And so I'm paying you a ton of money and I'm sitting here at home. Give me a break,
Absolutely. That's not what a lot of kids, they have this, when you're leaving to go to college, they have this mindset of what college life is going to be like. And that was all taken. So a lot of kids went into kind of a depressive state, that school was kind of hard to focus on. Everything that they imagined college would be like was not what was happening. So, that we have to take that into consideration. And then, financial, a lot of parents, first gen parents, that college bill, that first college bill, that kind of shocks people. I mean, for me, it was my second child, so I was fully aware. But that first financial could be a little bit of a shocker too. But I do believe most of it was COVID.
Melissa, would you add anything?
I think I would just like stamp and double click things. We've listed a number of issues, and all of these issues will be in the context that we don't have a comparative year for before 2020. This graduation year, to see how our students fared relative to other children, will be interesting. But I think that from speaking to our students, there are a number of factors from fit, perhaps financial fit, or social fit, like not being quite right for kids. There are things like habits that we need to lean into as a school to support our kids in, making it hard for students to persist with the level of rigor at college. So there's a variety of reasons and a variety of responses, both technical and academic and social, that we'll need to provide to see this number go closer to where we want it to go.
So just for comparative purposes, the national average for first year persistence is 75%. So the average here for us is around the same. So we're kind of on par with the national average in recent years. And again, that's just after the first year. Going back to the story here, so we began with like graduation forecasting and then went through the steps that has to sort of be in place in order for students to have the opportunity to persist. And what we're looking to do, stepping back, is slightly increase matriculation to something closer to 80%. And we've got kind of a plan in place, a 4-point plan, if you will, doing that. And then if we follow that 4-point plan, matching, avoiding late enrollment, a module on matriculation to college so kids know what they're getting into more fully, and all kids do, and then some cohorting in smart ways, we should see both some smoothing out of these persistent values over years, something more steady, as well as maybe a higher starting point.
I think for me, it would be nice to see this. There's a lot here that's good.
Yeah.
100% applied. 100% of the applicants got accepted somewhere. Where did they go? Which is not what this slide shows. It shows, accepted, but
Yeah.
so 100% got accepted. And then of that 100%, what's interesting to me is this first generation number, which I think if the parent has been to school before, you guys know better than me, but they know what to expect. The first time in, the parents don't even know how to explain it to the kid, right? So 100% applied, 100% got accepted. How many of those went in? And of that cohort, what percent stayed over the years? And I think there's bits and pieces here, but that other slide didn't show, like, it didn't follow that path. You know what I mean?
Yep. So I think, let me just make sure. So if we just follow,
it's showing different things. It's matching the applicant. I've got to deduct the actual number that applied from these numbers to get to where I want to get to. Right.
Yeah.
So, I'd like to see the other set of numbers and just make it real simple.
So
X% applied, X% of those got in. Yeah.
And so is the denominator the senior class, not necessarily graduates? Is that what you're saying?
Well, that's a better starting point, actually.
Yeah.
Here's the senior class. Here's how many of them applied. I don't know how you fit graduation in there. Maybe I'm overthinking it, but I'm interested in how many of the senior class applied, and I'm assuming there's a very small number who applied who didn't graduate, so we could probably ignore that. It's going to be de minimis. And then of the applicants, how many got accepted? That's a good number to know. And then once you're accepted, how many decided to go to school, to move on?
Yeah.
There's a drop there. And then of that, how many made it through the first year? And there's a drop there. See, that flow would be interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, would agreed. It's funny the way in which persistence is defined in the industry, and I'm kind of learning a bit as I work with those who are fully in it, including our alumni success managers. The denominator for persistence is those that matriculate, which is a little different.
Use that then, because it's not going to be that much different. You only have how many? There's not that many. So use that if you want to use it.
In this case, it's 70 per, like with the founding cohort, it's about 70% of 100% of our kids. So there's a 30% number of students that is not matriculating, which is a fairly significant portion.
Meaning they're just not going to school, but they applied and they decided not to attend.
And they got in, and then they decided not to matriculate for whatever reason.
That's what I want to, that's the right way to think about it. Yeah.
So it was 30, it's typically about 30%, 25 to 30% of our kids.
Because that's a gap that you guys can address. I think once they move on, it's really hard for you guys to address what happens in year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yep.
But the encouragement to actually just take the step and try to do it.
Yeah.
That's something you guys have some, you can sit down with the kids.
And as you say that, I think it's reinforcing of the steps kind of like that our team is taking, like improved matching using data, avoiding late enrollment, where kids are not kind of as close to us because they've gone out and graduated now, and it's hard to kind of like gain the attention or communicate as easily. They're not in school every day. Something in the spring, which is like a boot camp of sorts around first day of college and first semester. And then I can kind of go back to like selection, like trying to get kids together so there's a support system intact of fellow graduates moving on to a specific college.
And being very supportive of schools where we know they are very supportive of our students. So some of our students matriculated to schools where we know they have an incredibly low persistence rate. And just being really transparent with families about that choice and presenting our reasons for, I don't want to say pushing, but talking about schools where we know they do some of this work. St. Francis, I think, is a newer connect where they're doing some of that cohorting work that we think, as well as some work to make sure things are financially feasible. So being a little bit more selective on our end with schools that we talk to, bring our kids to, from like college trips early. I know we've talked to the board about support with that being a wish list item for us, is some of the work that we can do to set kids up so that when they aren't required to see us, and we hope that they will want to see us and talk through these issues with us, that they are already in good stead to remain.
I had a question about university visits. For me, I was a first gen. I am a first gen college person attendee, and so I didn't even know what colleges were out there. And so the colleges that came to visit my high school left an impression on me that was, very important. Like literally didn't, and we didn't have internet back then either. So that's how I learned about colleges, and I got excited, and typically they'll send somebody that will sell the school. I don't know. I'm assuming you guys do that. Can you speak to, are we doing it? Is there a number? Can we increase it? What's the story there?
We have rock, paper, scissors, Josh. We have some rep visits that come through pretty frequently, and we're starting to build connections, deeper connections with schools so that they're excited to work with us. So folks will come and talk to our kids in our building. And then we've re-kicked off over the last 1 year. We did this before pandemic, college visits as well, where we'll bring our kids in groups to schools. So thinking about matching those is really exciting too. A lot of kids will list schools they saw in middle or high school as their top choices because they did make that connection as well. I'm also a first generation college student, so my list was very selected around schools I knew about, including the one I went to. I found out about that one on TV. So making sure that we have those exposures, both by inviting folks in, enhancing that across years. We have a new and talented team. We had a talented team, but we have some new connects with our new team as well, so that we can bolster that across years.
Got it.
I think with that, we can move into the next topic on the agenda, which is around the review of our data dashboard. And so, as you remember, we've kind of built this out a bit differently this year. Excuse the small font. I'm going to take you through kind of where things stand and not be repetitive with headlines. So we've talked a bit about enrollment already. I told you where that was. We're going to deep dive on pass rates in a moment. We looked at pass rates as a full board last month. We'll revisit that again today. Melissa, when reporting out on the SLC meeting, will talk about IA results for the high school momentarily. And so generally just the results vary across subject area and grade. Other updates here, and the updates are in green, just so you can interpret this. Financially, Kristen will talk you through where things stand as of the end of November soon, but we're in good standing. Attendance wise, I'm going to talk you through high school attendance momentarily, as well as Melissa. Middle school's in good form. High school's a bit shaky right now, so we're looking to double down there. There isn't a report out fully on suspensions this month, but we do have our eye on that. I think there have been a number of suspensions taking place at both sites over the past month. And so I would call this on watch right now with a full report out next month. I'm going to talk you through recruitment briefly today, perhaps with Chris as a co-pilot, on just where things stand now, where we're headed, and what we're looking to do. And I think the other values I have reported out already. I didn't talk about SPED compliance, but if you recall last month, I said we were facing some challenges as well as many of the charter schools around the city in getting students proper speech and occupational therapy support. And there being just some shortages in the DOE in making that happen. We have sent out vouchers to all of our families in the event that there isn't a vendor right now supporting those students through the DOE. And so families have the option of kind of going their own route and finding that service and it being paid for. Not as good as happening in school, but it's still better than nothing. So that's where things stand now, stand in that area now, which is, I think, just progress from the last month where those vouchers hadn't gone out for speech. So that's where things stand. I think with that, let's go into our first deep dive on course pass rates.
Sorry, Josh, on the first row there, can you just go back so I understand? Student enrollment, 655, 561, 543. And then notes, it's 83% of SED maximum rows. Does that description tie to the 65, 561, 543?
Yeah. Good. I appreciate the detail. So 655 is our max enrollment through SED. 655, and right now our enrollment is 83% of that max enrollment.
Okay, understood. Yeah, it didn't work.
So
okay, I
it.
got it.
And I think the only note is, we did apply for a change in the max enrollment with the state.
No, I understand. I was reading it differently.
Yeah, cool. All right, so that's that. Thank you for the question. Let's move into kind of pass rates now as of the 8th of December. This is something that we do look at on a weekly basis. So Melissa does a deep dive. It's updated on Fridays, and then Melissa does a deep dive on Monday mornings, and then gets an email out to team with some headlines. And so, Melissa, you want to talk through just kind of where things stand this right now as of, say, a month ago?
Yes, this is where we were on the 8th. We've moved a little bit since then. But this is a view of what I look at each week to coach principals into creating some action steps for movement. So here we see our grades dashboard. This is our core 4 across the network of 2 schools, if you will. We're in fairly good shape in history and science. You see one area of concern around our 6th graders with IEPs, though that has been, for the most part, remedied. This was a result of just one large assessment at that point. Students got some reteaches and an opportunity to redo. We'll look at math now. You can see that I'm going right to left because ELA is where the most talking points lie. There's some areas we're watching closely, namely our special education students at the high school, as well as our 6th graders. Again, you can see similar performance in that cohort across the board. And then we've been spending a lot of attention on our ELA courses. 7th grade at our middle school level, as well as our students with disabilities, and our lower school 9th and 10th grade ELA courses. This week, we're seeing an uptick after some intensive coaching around teaches and reteaches, some deep dives in gradebook health, particularly in our 9th grade. We're still watching our 10th grade while we're seeing some uptick. That is an area in need of more support. And we'll see a couple other data points that say that is an area where we want to dig in with kiddos.
This is counterintuitive because when going back 10 years ago, one of the learnings was if they can't read, then they can't read the math textbook, they can't read the history textbook, they can't read the science textbook. So you'd expect a lot more read in the others because they can't read their assignments if they're struggling in ELA. Why do you think that's not happening? Why is that?
I think there's A couple of things. Some of it is a lot of our science is phenomenon based. So while there are stimuli like reading to do, there's not like it's not a textbook. So there's a lot of more hands-on learning. There's a lot of modeling there. We've seen in our state test scores that students are able to interpret math up to a certain level, and they struggle a little bit more on state exams when they get to more complex multi-step problems in the upper grades, and that a lot of that might have to do with literacy. And then when we look at our middle school, there's a variety of stories with literacy there as well. I think that there are some places I have questions about. History at the middle school level is somewhere we're wondering, is the coursework rigorous enough? It is not our priority this year. That's a 2024-25 course review. At the high school level, we've done a really good job aligning those courses so that the 9th grade course looks a lot like the 10th grade course, looks a lot like the 11th grade course in particular. It's a slightly different format in 12th grade. So students are able to do a lot of iterative writing around historical sources, and they're doing much shorter reading. They're not reading like pages and pages of a textbook. A lot of the factual input might be more mini lecture style, using videos or other supports to do the content download. And then students spend a long time looking at primary sources or secondary sources where they're reading smaller bits. So something like something that's supportive of readers is something like a multi-read process, and students get that baked into the curriculum in history and in science. So it's not long form reading. In ELA and math, where they're doing long form reading, long form writing, and being asked to interpret the text, we see some of that breakdown, whereas some of the core teaching elements in history and science are supported there. I think at the high school level, we also have some very new but dedicated learning specialists in the science field, and a pretty dogged learning specialist in the history field as well, that are supporting students.
So that gives you a sense of kind of how we're approaching this, which I think is with a very close eye and a relatively closer eye than what we've done in the past. We've got better data, it's updated more often, more eyes on it, better communication. And so I think that bodes well for making sure that these grades, as best as possible, reflect learning going on. And then when learning isn't reflective of what we want it to be, additional supports can be put in play. So that's the approach. And then what students are earning grades wise should also align with what they're demonstrating on assessments and things. And so I think management of grade books and of grades and student assignments in class correlates with what they then demonstrate in other areas. So I think beyond that, the other deep dive looking at the dashboard is around high school attendance. Middle school attendance is in strong form right now at about 93%. At the high school, we've seen a recent dip that was closer to 90 in the first month and a half, is now is at 87%. And so we're looking at kind of grading levels and where things are. You see those visually here, but we don't have a cohort or class that is above 90% right now, and that's concerning. I think, there's a bit of like trendiness going on here where like high school students in the winter months, gets colder, are not in school as much as in September and October when it was just fun and it was new, etc. And so we've got to combat this. We've got to counter it well so the kids are in school every day and have the opportunity to learn. And so I think the work happening right now is Melissa working with our high school leaders to just diagnose the core reasons why, how we perhaps shore up some of our systems internally for incentivizing and reinforcing strong attendance, and devising some action plans for all students, as well as students that especially need it because they're struggling with attendance. So anything you'd add there, Melissa?
No, we have a sort of task force working on this. We are we are beginning to implement a reset of expectations for core staff members to be interacting with students more in their capacity as advisors, more outreach and really thinking about what's in our capacity to incentivize this. I think an interesting idea that is lofty is Juliana said, like, one of the biggest things that's working in places across the country where we're seeing this issue is like paying kids to come to school, right? Like you do at work. We don't have that ability, but we do have some flexibility to create more positive incentives, as well as like to stamp the consequences that exist. We talked about attendance minimums for classes this year. So making sure that families and kids are aware of how close they are to that, and that they are coming on time.
So we'll report out again how we're doing in January here. Last deep dive coming from the data dashboard is around recruitment, and this is recruitment not for this year, but for next year, for 24-25. And so this is an early peek at kind of where things stand. I'm going to focus you on the right values here, which is the year-to-year difference, mainly kind of looking at this, as well as kind of where we are now, which is in the direct unity applications submitted as of the current month. So 6th grade is our big entry grade. As you know, we're looking to have 95 students enrolled in our 6th grade in the fall of 2024. And so we've got 95 seats open as of that time. As of now, we have 20 applications for those 95 seats. Those are applications that are coming directly to our school, specifically to our school. They are not common applications, which is a practice in the city now where you, as a parent, can check boxes and have just applications sent to 15 or 20 schools if you like. And so this is specific to our school. So we found historically that it offers a better measure of ultimately a student and family enrolling in our school versus the common application where, I mean, you may, for example, have a family from the Bronx submitted application, even though the likelihood of them attending our school in central Brooklyn is very low. So that's what we're looking at when comparing where we were last year at this time to this year. We are down 13 applications right now submitted as of December. So we're keeping our eye on this and want to rebound this so that we're in strong form in January and February, and ultimately have 190 applications that are not common, specific applications to school by the lottery in early April. So that's 6th grade. You do the same kind of thinking and calculus down below. The 9th grade, or maybe second biggest feeder grade. Right now we're up on applications as of now versus where we were last year, 29 versus 20. In terms of the work on the ground, I think there's been a very solid focus and maybe the most robust focus we've had in making connections with the counselors of existing feeder schools, 5th grade counselors. And those are the schools that we worked with in the past, as well as increasing the number of feeder schools that we have that we are in collaboration with. So that's been our maybe main thrust of the work this fall. Chris was at a school in Eastern Brooklyn this afternoon, a school that we had not attended before, meeting with all of the 8th grade students and their counselor. And so that's been more of the work this year than in the past. I think that means good things for January, February, and March. And we've got some work to do specifically in the 6th grade to match where we were last year as well as exceed. Chris, is there anything you'd add to what I've said here that would be fruitful for the full board?
No, I think you covered it. Thanks, Josh.
Yep. And so those are the deep dives for today coming off the dashboard. We're now
When
going
you talk to, when you're out recruiting, what message resonates with people? It seems to be said, if you said 3 bullet points, 100% of the kids apply to college, 100% of those get in. Of that 100%, X% are first time, college. Isn't that all we want to be telling people? And shouldn't that resonate?
Chris, does that you tell us in terms of 6th grade? What are the 3 bullet points that resonate best with?
I mean, if that's our pitch as a school, if that's like why we exist, is to prep people for, we should be open about that. Like in 6th grade, and just say this is why we're here. This is what we do.
The message changes quite a bit, whether we're speaking to students or parents, ninth graders or sixth graders. The biggest conversations that we've had around sixth grade for families, one is safety. They want to send their kids to a safe school. They want to know their kids are going safe to the school and can get to and from the school safely. So that bus we put in place, being able to offer a private bus route that picks the student up within half a mile of where they live. That's been a big feature. Parents want to talk about safety. They want to talk about caring teachers. They do want to talk about college readiness, but at the sixth grade level, that's a very much far away conversation. They're more worried thinking about, does Unity Middle School offer high school Regents courses, which we do, which is cool. So those parents who are on the ball thinking about schools now, they're asking detailed questions. How big are the classes? Does Unity Middle School offer high school classes? Where do Unity eighth graders go to high school after they graduate? Hopefully most to Unity High School, but those are the questions that our sixth grade families have most.
Chris, does the after school enrichment get a lot of attention in your mind? That it's free?
Yeah, I would say about half of the families, once they perk up when they hear about the after school enrichment, the clubs, extracurriculars, not necessarily needing to be St. Nick's Alliance, but they do ask, hey, what clubs does Unity offer? What sports does Unity offer? Things that make us a bit special.
It's helpful. So we move into committee reports, Jim, and I think we can start with SLC if that makes sense.
Keep
So
going. Yep.
yeah, so Melissa, myself, Jeanette, and Juliana met on Thursday of last week, and here's the agenda in front of you. For tonight in green, we've talked about headlines already. We covered those during that meeting. Other things discussed, we're going to talk about the academic dashboard. We did much of that in our conversation of the dashboard tonight. So there's some overlap between the SLC dashboard and the general board dashboard. And so we did that work. Melissa's going to go into high school IAs in a moment. And then as a part of our strategic planning, we talked about graduation forecasts and alumni success already. So a number of items have been covered already or will. And we talked a bit about just kind of where we are with our response to IA1 at the middle school during that meeting. Nothing to bring to the full board, but just some good conversation and progress communicated. So I think with that, we'll move into an abbreviated report out of the first round of interim assessments at the high school, which took place in early November. And I think with that, I'll hand things off to Melissa.
Yep. So we gave our IAs at the high school in December, they were given in October. And as folks may remember from years past, the first round of IAs tend to be in-class assessments. After last year's results, we decided we wanted to give just a bit more verisimilitude to the administration. So while these were truncated exams, students only learned about a quarter of the content for the year at this point. They were given in testing conditions. We saw really uneven results across courses. Of course, again, students have only learned a portion of the content this year. Many of the styles of questions are iterative, so it's a little bit of conjecture here, but some things were clearly on track right now and some things were clearly off track. So right now, global history 2, US history, earth science, and geometry, we're on track. That is consistent with last year's Regents results around Global 2 and US history. Earth science, we did see an uptick last year in this co-teaching pair's first year. Geometry did not have a strong year last year, so this one is a bit of a jump, though this course is looking great this year. Off track for our ultimate goals, Algebra 1, ELA 2, and Living Environment, which are courses we're watching very closely. Those are the sort of bellwethers of graduation for kiddos. So as well as Chemistry and Algebra 2, which is consistent with last year as well. looking at this cycle, we've had some leadership transitions, we've had some teaching transitions as well. One major focus for myself and Ms. Yoon, our principal, is focusing on strengthening our response to data cycle in IA2. It's clear that some of our teachers need some just direct support around this, especially some of our new folks. So we are I am absorbing a lot of this cycle for cycle 2. We are resetting with this on the 3rd of January when we have a professional development day, and we'll be leaning in deeply into this cycle across IA2. Josh, let's look at ELA actually, based on some of the things we were talking about with gradebook. We're going to deep dive on just one of these right now. So here is our, but I should pause for any questions on sort of the overall. Great. I'll give a slice of what our high-level data response looks like right now and how we're approaching some scores that we're hoping to see go up. Classically, while Unity has lagged the state in ELA, we have had a stronger showing than what we had last year. Last year, we had 43% of students successfully gain credit here. We did see these cohorts impacted by COVID in a big way. I think, Josh, is the one next to last year's 2023 region supposed to actually be state results?
I'm sorry.
I think so.
Which
So
value? Let me get this right. You mean this result here?
yes.
Yeah, that should be state. Good eye.
So while we saw a little bit of a drop across the state, we saw ours a little bit more precipitously last year. And surprisingly, we had at the time the same teacher, the same curriculum. So we know that there are some things that are reasons for this that we'll dig into in a second, but we're watching this course really closely. The exam the students took this year was substantially the same. There was one swapped passage just based on a new release passage that we wanted to see students take, but the question type, the number of questions, the genre were similar. This class is taught by 2 new to Unity teachers. Our coach is now in her 2nd year and is in an AP seat. We are off track to meet this target. We have a 51% of students right now who would have received credit if this were the real thing in the end of the year. It is a slight uptick over last year where we're looking at like 2 different brands of apples year over year, but not enough to see a market improvement. There's a couple reasons we know this is happening. To Jim's point earlier, this cohort scored a 6th grade level equivalency on the fall STAR exam. So we know that foundational skills are something students deeply need to work on. This year already, they're reading much more grade level appropriate text than they have years before. We've done a lot of work with this curriculum, but we know we need to lean harder into the things that we do with high schoolers when we see gaps in reading. Reading amount, vocabulary work, as well as some foundational supports for students who need it. We saw it within this test that students struggled on long form argumentative writing. They're asked to do that in a short amount of time, but we need students practicing that with frequency in class and revising their work so that they can see what strength looks like there. And then students struggled with questions asking them to determine meanings of words and phrases. Our teachers have planned reteaches pitched around these errors, and students had new opportunities to demonstrate understanding at a passage level. We're seeing some uptick there. And then what we do know, the depth of planning with this new teacher group who hasn't been with us before, they'll need supports across time. Our ELA team is also engaging in a cycle of regularly looking at student work in their department meetings here. And the ELA chair is working with 10th grade. We have an associate chair who's able to support as well with the other folks so that they can get this 10th grade pair can get the most of her attention.
I think just from a context standpoint, I'm not sure that this is the best visual to kind of give you some insights, but just historically where we've been is just kind of like, within 10 points of state. And so going back to our prior conversation around graduation and college matriculation, et cetera, students need to pass these exams in order to get the ability to graduate in 4 years. And so they need to pass ELA, math, science, history, and one other course. Melissa, did I say that right?
ELA, math, history, science, and one other course.
Thank
Yes.
you. Yes. All right. And so I think, we historically prior to COVID, we were within kind of 10 points, just around there to the state average. From an authorization standpoint, the goal that we are aiming for is to meet the state average. And so have approximately 80% of our students or 77% of students pass that exam each June or August. We were at 43% last year. So there's a big gap. In the past couple of years, there have been some exemptions where there have been waivers and students did not have to pass the Regents exam to then move forward as long as they passed the course. We're now moving back to a scene in which pre-COVID, kids do need to pass these courses and pass these Regents exams specifically. And so we're monitoring these are high stakes toward graduation. And so ultimately 100% of our students will have to pass the ELA Regents exam in order to sort of move forward and graduate, with a couple of exceptions, but that's a handful of students with different circumstances. So this is important. So I think we're looking at this very seriously. Stepping back, we did some of the same deep dive in the other 4 core areas with Juliana and Jeanette, but we wanted to give you a flavor of what we discussed with them and the way in which we're looking at this for each of these courses that end in a Regents exam. Are there any questions coming from team about this exam or anything else around Regents for tonight? All right. So I think with that, Jim, we're going to move over to the second report out, which is AFC related. And so what everyone sees in front of them now is the agenda for that meeting, which we had yesterday. And then what's in green is what we will cover as a part of tonight's meeting. So Kristen's going to go over the November financials in just a moment.
Yeah, Josh, do we have quorum?
We do, yeah, we do. We have 6 voting board members in the board, and we have 3 here tonight, so we do.
Okay.
All right, and so in addition to Kristen talking through November financials, we'll as we get into the approval portion of the meeting tonight, have 3 items up for approval that we discussed with the AFC at length yesterday. So we'll say more about those momentarily. Kristen, shall I let you share your screen?
Yes, please, if you can give me access.
Cool. I think Chris has to do that, if I recall. All right. Chris, can you give Kristen co-host privileges to share her screen? All right. Let's do this. Do you want to go? Why don't you go through this verbally if you can, and if you yeah, I think it's a rather short update. So go ahead, Kristen.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of change from last month. Okay, so for November, when we talk about the NICEAD benchmarks, we are meeting all of the benchmarks as of November 30th. And we are projecting our year-end surplus, which is also one of the benchmarks that we'd need at the end of the year. So looking good all through and through for the NICEAD benchmarks. When we move on to the bond covenant, we are in compliance for the cash on hand requirement. And then the debt service coverage ratio. We are missing the mark just slightly projected for June 30th on that. And that is just due to the one-time bond closing costs. So when we pull out those costs and look at it as a traditional year, because remember, we don't have to report out on this yet until 24-25. So we're just kind of tracking our progress on this metric. When we pull out those one-time costs, we're meeting the metric and exceeding it with plenty of room. So just something to be aware of there. We talked about enrollment a little bit throughout the meeting so far. We are above budget, so we are expecting a slight positive variance on that revenue source.
If it's easy, Kristen, I think you do have co-host privileges now. I see you
There we
listed.
go. Yep, there we go. Thank you. Okay, there we go. So moving on to the balance sheet, no major changes from the prior month. One thing I just want to point out, we are accruing some costs related to the flood at our high school. So we're accruing those into the accounts receivable in anticipation of getting reimbursed from the insurance company. So that's kind of building up there and not hitting our P&L side. Moving on to our P&L, when we're looking at November 30th, we are projecting, or we do have a positive net surplus, and actually very close to what our surplus was last November. But there's one key thing that I want to point out here, and we've talked about this throughout every month this school year. Our lease assistance revenue line is lagging behind. So if that were to have occurred timely, we would be seeing an even greater surplus as of November 30th. But because of the timing of the application for that reimbursement, we're lagging behind a little bit, but we will receive the full amount by June 30th. So it's just going to be a catch up each month as we're trying to play catch up there. No major variances on the expenditure side. I've provided commentary for each of the categories, but nothing major to flag at this point. So when you're looking year over year, we're kind of right in line with where we were last year, but knowing the lease assistance is behind, we're even in a better position than we were. Any questions so far? Okay. Moving on to a year-end projection. Spoke about this briefly a couple of minutes ago or seconds ago. We talked about our enrollment being a little bit higher. So we are projecting a positive variance on our per pupil subsidy, which is helping our net surplus for year-end projection. Expenditures, no major variances at this time. So they're kind of projecting them to be in line with where we are budgeted. And then finally, our cash on hand, our cash projection through the end of the school year. Same story we've heard for the last couple of months, looking good up until we get to June. So no major swings in kind of where we're projecting that actual day cash on hand. I think we were at 30 last month. We're at 31 this month. And reminder, this is just the Unity cash, not the FONB and Unity cash. So we'll have that discussion as we move into the second half of the fiscal year about the April-May timeframe of what do we want to do to try to get that metric up to the NICEAD benchmark, and we'll go from there. So we'll continue to have those discussions and keep an eye on that. But otherwise, looking good for the rest of the months. If there's any questions on any of the financials, I take them at this time. Okay. Josh, did you want me to go on to?
I think let's do that as a part of the approval process, just in a moment.
All right,
Keep it clean. And so with that, I'll go back to our shared screen on my end. And we'll move into the report out for the DFC, Development and Facilities Committee. I'll say a bit about fundraising initiatives, and then provide an update on both the replacement of our gym floor at 584 Driggs, as well as our work in a potential renovation and expansion of that building. So let's see, on a development front right now, progress from the last month includes that I shared out the concept of an advisory council last month. We're going live with that tomorrow. So we'll send an email out tomorrow morning to about 300 and change young folks, old folks who are interested in our school who might be willing to serve as advisory council members. So that goes out tomorrow, and we'll know more in a month about just our response. So that's one set of progress. In addition to that, a holiday letter will go out on Thursday, just a general holiday letter to end the year out to supporters of the past. And then, if you recall, we talked about naming rights as an initiative last month. Progress there is that Eric, who's consulting with us and has been a part of the school forever, but is not on staff this year. He did speak with a rep from the group that we're modeling this initiative after, and so we get some clarification there. It will provide just some help to us and sort of how we get the ball rolling. So happy to chat with folks offline about what those tidbits were, but generally speaking, that'll be something that we kick off very likely in January after launching the advisory council. So from a development standpoint, that's where things stand. From a facility standpoint, we have the gym being a new gym floor being installed over the December breaks. That's starting up just next week. And so we will have a new floor in January to do everything that we do in the gym with, including PE and basketball and lunch and arrival and other sports. So excited for that. I'll show you a picture in a moment of what the visual looks like there. And then we are continuing with some exploratory expansion work that would be happening over the break. Essentially, we've got some engineers coming in to ascertain the ability of the building and its foundation to hold additional weight and an additional floor. So that'll take place over the break alongside the new floor being installed. So lots of action in the gym over the course of the break. That's where things stand from a facility standpoint. Are there any questions from the full board? Cool. And there's the visual, the before, the during, and the after. The visual on the right is the gym. And so we'll have a new court down in January, and then the lines and that logo, that fancy logo in the middle will be there in late January. But excited for that.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the latest coming from the DFC. And last but not least, the ECPC, all things community partnership wise. So I think we'll bring just one goal to the mix, one headline from our meeting last Tuesday. That was myself and Sal and Trudy. And so here we are. We've got a host of events coming up over the course of the second half of the year. And we've got a number of people that have said, I'm in, count me in. I can't wait to come. And so we've got walkthroughs happening in January and February, and Jim and Trudy and Josh Phillips, who's not on the board, but a good friend of the program, will be taking part in. And you'll see down the list kind of where people stand. So good representation here. I think we'll get Lenny and Marion sort of signed up for a couple of events too, as we fill out this calendar. But this is exciting for us. So with that, we've got a plan. And so, generally speaking, I think that's all we have for committee report outs tonight, Jim.
Okay, so we move to the was it approval items, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the first item is the easy one. Meeting from the prior board meeting. Minutes from the prior board meeting on November 14th. Presumably, everybody had a chance to review. Any questions, comments, changes? We all good? Okay, all in favor of approving those minutes? Show your hands, please. Thank you. Next item is the renovations to the stage.
Yeah.
So Josh,
Yeah. So the background here is that we received a grant from a local nonprofit here in Brooklyn. They give to schools, and so we applied for the grant, got it. It's for $25,000, and it allows us to upgrade a much needed upgrade to our stage and our auditoriums, new curtains and some new acoustics. So next time you come in, you'd see kids performing in the background to match that performance. So in terms of the approval tonight, we sought 3 bids. for this work with the funding that we had. We were able to obtain two active bids, and we would like to go with the cheaper option, which is good. The other benefit to this option is that the group here works pretty closely with other DOE schools, and there's a lot of bureaucracy that kind of goes in that, so they understand kind of how that works. So this we feel is the best vendor for us. This work would kick off sometime in the new year in collaboration with the leadership at PS44. So the ask tonight is to approve up to $25,000 in work being done on the stage at our school using the group we've identified, who I don't have the name of now. Kristen, you may have it handy. Chris, you may have it handy. If you don't, it's okay. But again, it's covered by the grant that we were awarded last spring.
Okay. Any questions, comments? All right, thank you. All in favor? Okay, next is the geotech.
Cool. So again, this is the exploratory work to figure out whether the building and the structure below it can handle the weight of a new floor. So we're early in this process, but this is a necessary step. I've been working with David Briggs of LOSI, who we've worked with for some time in obtaining bids here and identifying the best person and group to do that work for us. So we sought to obtain 3 bids here and then received 2 bids. And so we would also like to go with the cheaper option here. I believe this is for 24. Is that right, Kristen? Do you have that number in front of you?
I don't have the number for the geotech. Sorry.
Yeah, it's 20 up to 24. That was for the bid that we would have to go with. The other bid, I believe, was for 32. This is $1,000. So we're going with the cheaper option here. This would be completed over the December break, and the reason for that is just that we've got a lot going on in the gym. So let's get it all over with rather than having to do the gym floor over the December break and then take a part of the floor out to then do some of the drilling work that has to happen to better understand what our building can take in terms of weight. So that's the background here. The name of the group is Geotech Consultants, and so this is someone who our architects are familiar with and have been happy with in the past, and so comes with a recommendation here too.
And do they refill the holes?
It's funny you mentioned that. I'm seeing emails kind of come through now about like who's refilling the holes, Geotech or the folks who are installing the gym. And so that is in progress, but I believe that Geotech will be filling in all the holes. And then after that,
yeah, I would
a pouring of cement before then the gym floor comes down. So
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
As long as somebody's focused on that. Okay. Any questions, comments? No? Okay, all in favor? Thank you. Okay, investment of funds.
Okay.
Kristen.
Yeah, I mean, Kristen, you want to provide maybe a bit of motivation here? What are we trying to do? And I'll kind of talk you through this and have you provide the details. So motivation.
Currently, Unity's funds are receiving minimal to none to no investment income. So we are looking to change that and find a way to invest our funds in a secure, safe manner while trying to get a little bit of interest with the rates being in an upward trend after the last Fed fund rate meeting. They kept it the same, so we'll see what they do. But we are in a more positive position with rates. So we do need to look at trying to be a little bit smarter with investing our funds and earning some income off of that. So we have done a little bit of research with our current account banking partner for solutions. They didn't have anything that was really super positive with rates. So we did look at an organization called NYLAF, New York Liquid Asset Funds, who specializes in helping school districts, schools, municipalities, and I think the other one was fire departments, invest their funds in compliance with state laws but also get a little bit more of an investment return. So we talked about that during the AFC, and we are looking at starting a relationship with NILAF so that we can get interest rates on some of our funds more in line with where the Fed fund rate is at this point.
And so, Jim, from a board perspective, Jim, is there anything you'd want to add for other members, just so they have a sense of what you see here?
Yeah. So, Kristen, they had a couple options.
Yep.
Obviously, the longer you want to lock up your money, the higher the interest rate they'll pay. And my view on this is you go with maximum liquidity, don't lock up any money. We can do that at FOMB if we decide to lock money up, but do the most. Remind me, what interest rate were they paying on the one where you could withdraw weekly or whatever for payroll?
So they have two plans. Yep. The full flex is the one that we can withdraw on daily. There's a cutoff early in the morning. It's either 11 or 12 to get same day withdrawal. That is at and around the Fed fund rate the last I had spoken with them. So they are really close to that Fed fund rate, which was, I think, about 5.25, 5.5, somewhere in that range. And then they have a max account that is locking it in for a week. So there's only a specific day in the week that you can draw down on that. The max, they have to have availability in their portfolio for us to get into that. That rate tends to be just slightly higher than the full flex. But that would depend on their availability at the time that we would be looking. But we can make that adjustment as we move.
It was like it was like 10, 15 basis points,
Yeah.
just so order of magnitude. That's what we're talking about. So my view is it's just de minimis, and it creates a headache if you need funds immediately. So just get the one that you can withdraw at any time, and you lose a couple basis points. Who cares?
Correct.
But I'm open to a conversation around that.
Yeah, and they do have a CD option as well, but that would be looking for more long-term lock-in, which we don't want to do.
Yeah, and I don't think the school is the right place to do that. FOMB, fine. But the school needs maximum liquidity at all times. So don't play around there. At FOMB, we can talk about different other options to tie up the money a little bit.
Correct.
So I think with that, the item for approval tonight is sort of the approval to move forward with the investment that has been described.
Yeah, subject to Mario's comments on that one pager.
Correct, on the resolution.
Which there's nothing there. I mean, I know exactly what she's going to change, so I think it's fine. So yeah, but subject to legal sign off on the document, I think I'm in favor. But okay, any questions, comments?
Just to clarify, so it's not a one sum. It's flexibility. It's full liquidity. So it's the entire. Is it one account? Is it a portion? What's the?
It would be.
Yeah.
Yep. So it would be one account with NILAF, and then they kind of collateralize it behind the scenes with various funding sources. So we would have one specific account.
Yep. Yeah, we see it as one account. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So structurally, nothing much changes on our end, operationally for us that way.
The only operational change would be right now it's sitting in our financial institution and we pay our bills out of that account. So right now it would just be I would have to transfer funding over as we have payrolls coming due and things like that. So it's a little bit more of a cash flow requirement from me of keeping the funds moving back and forth and meeting our bills and financial obligations, but not a huge lift.
Does it make sense within the approval to provide up to a certain amount? I think we have an amount that we've stated would seem appropriate given our budget. No.
So I mean, I know we did talk about around $250,000, I think, because that's where the FDIC limit is. But there are times in the month, specifically the end of the month, when we could have a payroll due and our rent due, and we would exceed that $250,000.
But that's fine. That's fine as long as you're pulling that money in from this new account a day or two before. We don't have all this money sitting around which is our problem today, that's in excess of the $250,000 limit.
Yeah, so
I'm fine with a day or two of exposure, but right now it's not, we shouldn't be doing this.
Yeah, I would agree, Jim. And I think, like thinking of breaks and stuff or time away, like we have the holiday break coming up, there might be a time frame where I need to move it in now. And it might be a little bit more than a couple of days, but never more than like a week or two.
I'm assuming most schools are doing this already that have the funds and are able to do it.
Yes,
Nothing out of the ordinary.
They specialize in school districts. We would be the first charter school that they have, but we have met all the legal obligations to be able to qualify under their program.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Okay, all in favor? Thank you. All right, Josh.
And I think we move into the last agenda item for tonight, which is a quick one. So our next meeting will be on January 18th. I'm proposing a 6 p.m. meeting because this would be an in-person meeting. Back in August, or I guess it was June, when we put together the calendar. We said, hey, let's try to get together on 3 occasions this year. And so here we are. So we get to meet up again at 584 Driggs in January on the 18th. And then I think we probably break bread afterward, like we did the last time around. And
I've got it as the 23rd in my calendar. Is that not right?
You could be right. I might be wrong here.
Yeah, I think our last DFC meeting, you said that. I don't know which one's which.
I recall that. Yeah, 23rd. All right. No one saw that. Quick update. 23rd. It's in your calendars, though. It's the 23rd. So I think you're in good shape. Typo here. So at that meeting, at that in-person meeting, which is great, we will also very likely have updates. Our students, the middle school, are taking their second round of STAR assessments in reading and math this week. So we will likely have some updates on kind of growth and what we're seeing there. I imagine some updates with course pass rates and kind of what progress has been made there. And then perhaps some updates on development initiatives. Some new photos of our brand new floor at the high school. You'll be able to see it in person. And so I'm sure it'll be a busy meeting, but those are some of the highlights of what I see forthcoming.
Right. And whoever runs the calendar, if they could change that invite
to in person
to the new time. Yeah. So everybody.
Yep. I think that works. I'm kind of taking the liberty to make that proposal, but it was better for people than last time around. So why change it?
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. So excellent. Anything people want to talk about offline in an executive session? We can do that now if people have something to talk about.